All right, hi. So I just finished watching or rewatching Ash versus Evil Dead again, um, all three seasons. Love that show. Always gives me a kick. And so now I have Evil Dead on the mind. So I thought I'd talk about it. Because when I'm watching the last couple episodes, certainly the last episode of Ash versus Evil Dead, it's huge in its scope. And I always think, wow, how far this franchise has come from its humble beginnings of this independent film. The first one was, very, very independent movie. Um, it came from, you know, back in 1979, he had these guys, 19, 20, whatever years old, and they had been making, shorts, mostly comedic, goofy films on 8 millimeter for, several years. Um, and they had made, I forget what the name of it. There was a film they made which they showed in their, was it college or high school? Anyway, they showed it at school and it was very successful. They actually made money off of it, I think. And then eventually they were asked, "Can we actually make a feature length film?" And I think it was actually Rob Bowman who was not Rob Bowman. That's the X Files. The well, I'm sure he did other stuff, but um, Rob 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 Tappert. Rob Tappert, otherwise known as Mr. Lucy Lawless. Um, he seemed to be the one who was really pushing things forward and wanted to get this a film made, whereas the others were like, I don't know if we can do this. But they went ahead and made a prototype film called Within the Woods, which they showed at their high school, and it got a great reaction. And then later on, they showed it at an actual theater in front of Rocky Horror, and it got a good reaction. Um, and then they went ahead and were like, okay, how do we make a a full movie? They had already decided that they weren't going to make a feature length comedy or drama, that horror was the way to go, which is why they made Within the Woods to see if they could do that. But um, then they had to figure out, okay, what's the budget for this thing? How do we figure out how much money we need? And they started just making the movie in their heads and trying to figure out how much money they might need, and it just ballooned up into a figure which, you know, for people who didn't have connections to rich people, was just it seemed like an unreachable uh, amount of money. So they had to go around and find as many investors as they could, and they did. And they raised, I think, $85,000 before they went ahead and started filming. They had wanted to film in summer in Michigan, but time went on, and it was approaching winter time, and they certainly didn't want to film in Michigan in winter, so they went to Tennessee to film, and Tennessee wound up actually having an unusually cold winter. But the filming was, yeah, it went. I think it was supposed to be a 6 week shoot, which then became a 12-week shoot. Um, it just, it was went twice as long as it was supposed to. Um, horrible weather, and it was, a bunch of amateurs, right? Um, making this film. And they did, and in that 12 weeks, they still didn't get everything they needed. They still had a lot of pickups and a lot of additional stuff they needed to film in the next year. So they were filming from the end of '79 to the beginning of '80, and then through '80 they were doing pickups, and they were doing the animation for the end where you had the the corpses melting and exploding, and um, and then they had to edit the whole thing together, edit it visually together, um, and then edit the sound, the dialogue and the Foley sound, and then put music to it. You have the musical track, get the whole thing together, and make this thing an actual movie. Um, and then once they got it all together, they showed it at their old high school, where it was very successful, got a great response. Um, Not only from from the young people, but also there was a particularly one old lady who was there and who it made her day. I'm getting all this information, by the way, from the Bruce Campbell book, If Chins Could Kill. So after after that, they had to find a way to get this thing distributed so it could get in theaters and a wide audience could see the results of their efforts. At which point, enter one of the heroes of the Evil Dead franchise, Irvin Shapiro, a guy who had a long history in movies and in distributing movies, one of the founders of the Cannes Film Festival, I believe. He was very experienced, and he helped them to get Evil Dead advertised and distributed. But he did not see Evil Dead until December 1981. And then it finally, they were getting the film into film festivals and theaters in '82. And it was at Cannes that, I believe it was at Cannes, that Stephen King actually saw it and gave a review to it in the, I believe it was the Twilight Zone magazine. The Sam and Rob and Bruce saw that, and they were like, okay, we could totally use this in our advertising. Can we use this in our advertising, Stephen? And Stephen King, who's always been very good to fellow creatives, said yes, and that helped them quite a bit to use his positive review as part of their advertising. And then Stephen King also came to the rescue when it came to Evil Dead 2, which was having trouble raising funds. Evil Dead 2 was kind of a after the guys that had a terrible experience making Crime Wave, they were like, okay, let's just go make another Evil Dead movie just to go back to our roots and try to have fun again. And they were, interviewing actors, actresses, and yet they were having a hard time raising the funds. And one of the actresses who actually auditioned happened to go down, or I don't know where it was, but she happened to go to where Maximum Overdrive was filming. And she happened to talk to Stephen King and happened to tell him that she had just been with the guys who had made Evil Dead and were trying to make Evil Dead 2, but they were having a hard time raising funds. At which point, Stephen King, when he heard that, he got on the phone with Dino De Laurentiis, and next thing, it was like, hey, we need to fix this. And next thing, Sam Raimi and Rob Tapert and Bruce Campbell and whoever, knew, they were in Dino De Laurentiis' office getting a deal and getting distribution and getting getting what they needed to get this thing going. And then they went ahead and proceeded to make one of the greatest movies of all time. And I say that without sarcasm, without joking. I mean, that is, if you want to talk about, the original Evil Dead is, great in its own right, but Evil Dead 2, if you want to talk about cinematic entertainment, something as entertaining as you can get, and that's it, Evil Dead 2. It just starts right away. The history of the Necronomicon, and then introduces Ash and his girlfriend, and then, the words of the Necronomicon are spoken, the girlfriend gets possessed, and we're off to the races. And there is never a moment for you to be bored in that film. It's just wall-to-wall entertainment. Without any messaging whatsoever, without any themes, without any ideas of any sort. This is just pure entertainment. It doesn't even try to make sense. The Evil Dead franchise doesn't actually try to ever make sense, which kind of makes them critic-proof. You can't really critique the Evil Dead films because they're not trying to actually to make sense. They're just trying to be as entertaining as possible, and they generally succeed. Then, of course, came Army of Darkness, which, um, well, I mean, okay, I went through the history of the first Evil Dead just to kind of emphasize that this was a very, very grassroots, very, very independent amateur, film, which, and we've come from that to what we see in Ash versus Evil Dead. It's amazing how far it's come. Um, and then in Army of Darkness, um, the first Evil Dead was a straight up horror film. Evil Dead 2 was horror comedy. Army of Darkness is pretty much just a comedy. Some of the jokes in that thing you can almost imagine it being a Carol Burnett skit. I mean, it's that goofy. It's that just light and funny. Um, and it doesn't. I remember the first time I watched it, I was disappointed because it didn't really feel like an Evil Dead film to me. It certainly didn't feel like a horror film. There were a handful of Deadites, yes, but it's mostly skeletons, and there's barely any gore at all. I don't know why it shouldn't even be rated R. It should be PG. This was 10 years after the PG-13 rating came into being. It should have been PG-13. Although I think, if I remember, did I hear or read somewhere that Army of Darkness was actually given an NC-17 rating at first? Because it was called Evil Dead 3, and the rating people just saw the Evil Dead title and automatically slapped NC-17 on it. I think I heard that somewhere. Not sure, but anyway, it's it's if it's R, it's R light. Um, and it's got some funny stuff in there. It is my least favorite, but it's still got it's got some great lines. Um, and of course, it's got the two endings. And Ash vs. Evil Dead is a sequel to the theatrical cut, and the theatrical cut honestly is better. It just the pacing is better, the overall experience is better. Um, and it's funny because in watching the director's cut, the longer cut, with with a commentary on with Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell talking, when they get to the part in the movie where in the original theatrical cut you have Ash versus his double, his evil double, for the first time, and his double is like, "You're good, Ash, and I'm bad, Ash. You're goody goody two shoes, goody goody two shoes." And then, of course, next thing he knows, the shotgun is up against his nose, and good Ash blows him away, and then good Ash says, "Good, bad, I'm the guy with the gun," which is a great line, but it's not in the extended cut. It's a different take. And the line there is, I'm not that good. That's it. And Sam Raimi in the commentary is like, yeah, that alternate take isn't as good. The original line's better. Uh, um, but also, you also in that commentary again get reconfirmed. You already know this, but you just get confirmed again the fact that Sam Raimi just wants to entertain the audience. That's what he wants to do. He wants to give the audience a good time. And that's why the audience generally loves Sam Raimi. So, Army of Darkness. After that, of course, you had the 2013. Call it a remake. It doesn't quite work. Reimagining, I guess. And it was pretty good. I enjoyed it. For what it was pretty good. I thought that the cast did a really good job. That Jane Levy did a wonderful job with Mia, and I'd love to see her come back as Mia. And the overall, it's a pretty solid horror flick. Then you have Ash vs. Evil Dead, which is just, again, pure entertainment. Rollicking, frolicking fun. and the most the most hardcore of all of them. I mean, the amount of gore that's in it, the amount of language that's in it. It takes full advantage of the fact that Stars gave them no content limit. And and what's also amazing about it is that it's actually really well produced horror. The production values are up there, and there's some, you know, it's actually pretty frequent. You'll see a scene, which is just a legitimately good horror scene, and yet it's being played as comedy because it is a comedy after all, and they somehow mix these two things together. This great horror production with slapstick and just lightheartedness, and they make it work so well. And a good horror comedy is peak entertainment for me. I mean, you combine comedy, you combine basically horror, comedy and tragedy, which was the old term for it, and you make them both work at optimum levels. You're getting entertainment overload at that point. And the show's really well done. The cast is great. I love Kelly. I love Pablo. And then there are guest stars who do a fantastic job. Of course, in the last season, you have suddenly Ash has a daughter, which when I began watching season 3 for the first time, I was like, oh great, they gave him a daughter. Just pull that out of their ass. Okay, well, let's see what they do with it. But what they did with it was awesome. They made it work really well, and the way they had Brandy, despising her father as just a random dude, then despising her father as her father, and then learning to kind of come to terms with them and get a little and put a little trust in them, and then lose trust in him and get trust in him again, and then just adapt and become a Deadite fighter and Deadite killer. They did a really good job with it, and the actress did a fantastic job with it. And there, in season 3, episode 9, there's this great scene where she's in the work shed and she has her Ash moment, her Ash sequence, where she's just going full Ash with this possessed phone biting her and her wrapping up the hand, and then it's just, don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't seen it, but it's it's a delightful sequence. And again, the actress really nailed it. And I would love to see these characters again. I would love to see Kelly again, Pablo, Brandy. I'd love to see an Ash versus Evil Dead movie. Bruce Campbell has gone on record in some interview where he said that, I'm willing to play Ash one more time, but only if Sam Raimi directs it. Well, the fans would be perfectly fine with that. Let Sam cap it off, sure. But one of the problems with that is, I remember when they were considering making another Evil Dead film before they made Evil Dead, Ash vs. Evil Dead, Rob Tappert was like, okay, if we make an Evil Dead 4 and Sam Raimi directs it, it's going to cost like $85 million, $70 million. It's going to cost a lot of money if Sam directs this thing. And if the movie doesn't make a lot of money and, make a profit, then, this franchise is dead. And it was because of that they looked into making a TV series. And so that may still be one of the main factors getting in the way of making an Ash versus Evil Dead film, in addition to creative issues and scheduling issues. Although I kind of like to see them go back to the roots and have Sam actually film Ash versus Evil Dead the movie, or Ash versus the Machines, on 16 millimeter. Make it a 60 millimeter film. Make it guerrilla style. Make it with non-union members. Just make it go independent. Make an independent, low budget Evil Dead film again to just cap the whole thing off. yeah, that'll never happen, but it's a it's a fun idea. Um, so yeah, that's just me talking about Evil. Excuse me, Evil Dead off the top of my head. Um, yeah, just enjoyable stuff. A kind of go-to feel-good uh, movies and shows. So, uh, and of course, maybe I should just end it by just mentioning one of the greatest parts of the whole thing, which is in Evil Dead 2. Ash gets attacked by a headless, reanimated corpse wielding a chainsaw. That makes me so happy just to say that, because that's one of the greatest things ever. So, anyway, I'll stop rambling. Thanks for listening.